Hello everyone, you are listening to YoRadio.com with DJ Sakara as we are about to begin another one of our community interviews, and this week we are receiving the ELV League of Virtues from Europa. Now, for some of you wondering how come we are doing an interview today on a Friday, we did not change the date of our interviews. We just decided to add a second day to our interviews since there are so many people that we would like to interview, and at just one interview a week, we will be taking over a year to reach all the people we want to basically have interviews with. So from now on, we will be having interviews twice a week, which is Fridays and Sundays, both at the same time, which is from 5 p.m. Eastern to 7 p.m. Eastern, which I believe is 2 p.m. Pacific time to 4 p.m. Pacific time. So make sure to tune in every Fridays and Sundays for our interviews. And this Sunday we will be receiving the Black Company from Great Lakes. So you guys definitely want to tune into that, especially those of you who followed the Empire of the Fallen Lords interview, since the Black Company is one of the guilds they fought when they visited Great Lakes. So back to today's interview, I have two members of the ELV League of Virtues that I will basically call the ELV Guild, which will be a lot faster and easier to pronounce. And I have the Guild Master, Curzon, and one of his guild members, I'm not sure if he's council, and his name is Shy Talk. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves so that listeners can recognize your voices better, if you want to go ahead first, Curzon.
Hi there, everybody. Curzon Methane, Guildmaster of the ELV League of Virtues, Europa.
And if you want to go ahead, Shy Talk.
Oh, hello there. This is Shy Talk. Been playing the game for probably 2 years now, nearly, and I have trouble staying on my horse still. Hello, guildmates.
So, oh yeah, I just forgot to mention a little something. For all the people listening, we will be broadcasting the Euro Town Hall meeting that's taking place in Berlin. So you guys definitely want to tune in for that. Now back to our guests from today. As I mentioned earlier, they are from Europa, and I really don't know much about Europa. I have created a character there, but I'm still kind of a newbie over there, and hopefully you guys can tell us more about your home shard, and especially more about your guild. And so, Curzon, I believe you are the GM currently. Were you the founder of the guild?
Yes, I founded the ELV League of Virtues probably just under 4 years ago, when I was still living in Britannia in the Compassion Desert north of Britain, and that's where I formed the guild.
And what basically inspired you to start the guild?
Well, I had been with a couple of friends in a few other guilds, and they kind of fell apart and whatnot, and so I started a guild of my own. Basically, I just wanted to have a way to have a really cool guild title over my name. That's originally how it started, and then some of my friends wanted to join in and have guild titles as well, and it kind of just started that way as a group of friends who wanted to have these nifty titles, and we all gathered together to go on hunts and stuff. And that's pretty much how it started.
Wow. And so what kind of a guild exactly are you? Because a lot of people, myself included, was under the impression that your guild, especially with its name, ELV League of Virtue, was a role-playing guild, but apparently it's not the case. So what kind of guild exactly are you, and what's the role of role-playing in your guild?
Yeah, I did originally think pretty hard about the name. I wanted a name that my main character, Curzon Methane, was an elf, and I kind of have a place in my heart for elves since I've been a Tolkien fan since I was 8 maybe, and so I wanted something with sort of an elven theme, and I do kind of like to dabble in role play myself. I'm not a hardcore, hardline role player, but I do like to dabble in it because I've been an actor in real life. And so I thought long and hard about the name, and I came up with ELV. I tried a few others that didn't work, but I came up with ELV. And I thought, yeah, if we ever get into the area of role play, this would be a good name to have, and I think people would, see it, and it would stick in their minds, being that it's ELV. It would stick a lot better than something like X24 or something like that.
Which makes sense. But so what does your guild do exactly?
Well, yeah, it's not a strict role-playing guild. We're mostly based on PVM, player versus monster, and we generally stay in Trammel and do most of our gameplay in Trammel. We've made ventures into Felucca for different reasons, including champion hunts. But for the most part, our guild is based on Trammel PVM with whoever's online, getting together, a group of friends, easy chat, easy, getting along with each other, and we go on hunts to different locations and try to work as a group and basically have a good time. If role play comes into that, that's great. I encourage all forms of gameplay by guildmates. If they want to pursue role playing, I'll try and help as much as I can. If they want to pursue something else, then that's fine too. I'll try and help as much as I can, as long as it helps the community in general. It doesn't hinder it in any way. I'm all for that.
And so, but basically, I mean, your guild is basically just a general guild. You hunt, you do all kinds of stuff. Have you at any point tried to make it more of a role-playing guild, or was that never really in your intentions to begin with? And if not, why not?
No, yeah, actually, I did try a couple of times. I'm not really experienced at role play, hard-line role play like some of the more experienced guilds that are in Europa. But I did take a stab at it a couple of times, and it didn't really go over as well as I had hoped. Maybe that's because I'm not that experienced at it, or because we have such a broad base of different types of gameplay within the guild. It didn't go over real well, but I'm all for trying again at another time in the future. I think that it would probably work best, though, if we set it as like an event for the guild.
You want to comment on that, Shaitan?
Yeah, I thought I'd just say, having joined the guild and been part of the guild for 2 years, the thing I like about it is that we could look at it, because we're on computers and things, that it's more analog than digital, if that makes sense. So, or maybe even it's organic. It's forming. It's transforming every day we do something different. So we haven't really got a goal that we could say, well, this is where we're going. Kind of just let it happen, if you get my drift.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Basically, take it as it comes, and don't set specific mold that you can't get out of. Just whatever comes, and let's just enjoy it.
Yeah, that's quite right.
All right. And what are your recruiting policies? If somebody wants to join your guild, what do they have to do or go through in order to join? Yes, Shy Talk.
Well, if they have about 30 million in the bank, that's a start.
Okay. All right. So that eliminates a lot of people. Yes, Curzon.
Yeah, no, We're pretty easy about it. We don't actively recruit, I don't think. The way that people can join is if they meet an ELV member and get to know the elves and stuff like that. A current member can sponsor that person into the guild. They're basically vouching for the integrity of that person's character, and based on that recommendation from the member, I will go ahead and guild someone into the guild, make them a full member, as long as there's no dissension from the other members, then there shouldn't be a problem. If there is dissension, then, well, we'll leave them on Ronin status and talk about it, throw it around a little bit, see, what the feedback is. But basically how you join the guild is you get to know the elves, and if one of them sponsors you into the guild, then you're immediately guilded. If you want to join the guild and you're not finding a sponsor to sponsor you, well, you can make yourself known to the council, and then after, 60 days, if no one has sponsored this person into the guild, then I get together with the council and we talk about it and we make a decision one way or the other.
Okay. And do you have any alliances currently, like any formal alliances through the guild system?
Yes, recently we allied with the Guardians of Destiny. I got to chat with Vicious, the guild master of the Guardians of Destiny, and we talked about alliances. He had thrown around the idea with a few other guilds, but the Guardians were kind of slow to join an alliance with anyone, with good reason, and in fact I'm glad that they were. Because to me, since we're a Trammel-based guild, and I have a few players that were a little worried about, interactions with other guilds as far as green to green, I'm glad that he moved slowly on it, because it allowed the guilds to get to know each other. We went on a few hunts together, as well as Feluca champion hunts together, and we got to know each other, and we talked in each other's forums. And it was really a getting to, just like joining our guild, it was a getting to know each other process, and it took several months before we actually decided to make it official in the game. And we even had a little event that we played out in Ilshinar at Reg Valom, where we had, we actually formed the alliance.
That's one question I've always kind of wondered, because I personally am more of a Felucan player, and my guild is in Fel. I can see the need for having an alliance, but I'm a bit curious as to what would be the benefit for a Trammel-based guild to form alliances. Like, how does it benefit you to be green to this other guild? Because I can see many of the risks, like one of them being the risk of being killed AFK at a bank or something like that. So I'm like, how would you benefit from being green to another guild in Trammel?
Well, the main benefit that we were looking at, especially after having done some champion hunts together in Feluca, was that the mage's field spells would not affect the other players from the other guild, so that if a guardian cast a poison field, it wouldn't affect me if I ran through it, and like that.
Yeah, that's probably one of the main reasons as well that we would ally in Feluca, especially in Feluca, because we have so many reds, and when they start casting area effect spells, it can become quite hairy after a while. My next question for you would be really more about the the state of the European guilds, really. Europa, as far as I know, is an extremely populated shard. And yet, when you look at the guild rosters on the UO.com website page, you have fairly small guilds. I mean, you look at most other guilds, most of the shards, and they have a lot of guilds that are in well over 300 members, whereas Europa's guilds are fairly small. Do you have any idea why that is?
Well, yeah, the overall attendance to the Europa Shard took a drastic drop here recently when another game hit the market. I won't say which one, but yeah, we lost quite a few players to some of the newer 3D platform games that are coming out. It's the eye candy that draws them. I don't know exactly what kind of depth that their storylines and their gameplay has, but I'm hoping that these players will get their fill of that 3D panoramic view type thing, which it is quite impressive, I must admit. But I think that in recent time is the reason that we've had a little bit of a drop. As far as why we have small numbered guilds in Europa, I'm not sure. Maybe it's because people are more, clannish, or I'm not sure. Honestly, to tell you the truth, I'm not sure why they're smaller in Europe, but it might have something to do with nationalities or who. But
That could be possible. There is a lot of various nationalities on the European shard. Oh, gee. The joy of the long-distance phone call. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to pass on that one. But yes, go ahead, Shai.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with you there that it's the different countries and the language barriers between all the different countries. I suppose in the US, have the one language and it could be bigger. That's a big put together, so I hear. But yes, you would have smaller guilds, and I think a lot of people, the joy of playing Ultimate Online is do have this. You can be in a guild. You don't have to be in a guild. You can be in FAL. You don't have. People play it on their own like a single-player game. Lots of money. Some people like the communities and the friendship of a guild. Probably part of it too.
It's quite possible. Even though, I mean, the game for a while there had really drifted from a community game to really more of an individual game for a long time. And it seems recently to have been moving towards forcing players really to be more of a community. And we're going to get back to that whole community thing a little later on in the interview, because that is one of my big thing, the way the game has been changing, and the way a lot of the changes are being made to basically force that group fighting and group activity. But you were talking about so many people that left because of the new game coming in. How many do you think, not really how many, but I guess the question would be more that a lot of the veterans that have been quitting the game over the past few years, a lot of them blame this on Trammel and on all the Trammel rule set facets, basically, for the decline of UO, and from it no longer being today what it once was, and especially in the fact that Trammel has removed a lot, if not most, of the challenge from the game and the need for community. And how do you feel about that? Do you feel that there's still a community left in Trammel? Because except for basically guilds that are doing their little thing as a guild, what player interaction do you really see in Trammel? I'm actually asking you this question also on a personal basis, because I really don't play Trammel much anymore, and I kind of don't see it. And I was wondering, you as a more of a trammel player, where do you still see that community feeling?
Well, when I first started back on the Renaissance CD, and I believe that was when trammel first came in, I actually began play in Feluca because a friend of mine brought me into the game, and he was based in Feluca. And so I started playing there. And I remember one instance in particular that was the straw that broke the camel's back that sent me to trammel. I was working my beginning miner in Monoc, and I was at the mines just outside, where half of the mine is just outside of the city guard limit. And I was there mining, and this red mage, dressed all in red, showed up, and he just teleported in, and he killed my pack horse. And I got into a heated debate with him, why did he do that? And he said, because I can. And so I was arguing with him, and of course he killed me too. And that was when I decided, this isn't going to work. And I've actually heard that from other players who used to play back when there was no trammel, that it was very rough, very hard for them to make any headway because they were constantly threatened or harassed or murdered and looted by those players who had already gained an advantage in the game, who had already gotten a shoe up, and it was very tough for them to try and get ahead. And many of them, from what I heard over the years, got discouraged and left Ultima because of the overbearing overlords, the Reds, that would hunt them incessantly, and it was discouraging for them. And I think Ultima as a whole was losing players because of that, and that's why they introduced trammel. And in fact, I've heard some players say that to a certain extent, trammel helped to bring back up the player population of Ultima for a time. In today's market, I think that what's drawing players away from Ultima are the eye candy, the new 3D graphic platform games that are just, they're real startling to behold. Anybody with a sense of art that looks at these new 3D games are naturally going to be attracted by that. For me, though, I've stayed with Ultima because I have a faith in the virtues. When Richard Garriott introduced the virtues into the Ultima games, I think it was a brainstorm. The virtues come from way back when, during the time of knights and chivalry. And, that's something that our current day society lacks a lot of, especially here in America, is any kind of sense of virtue and honor and integrity and stuff like that. In a lot of regards, people are very me-oriented. They're very, what all I can get. So for me, trammel made a place where it was easier to get to know people, make friends, and do easy chat, and be able to, go about and do different things while still having these good friends that you can trust a little bit better and be able to interact with more easily. And that's kind of what it was for me.
Well, I guess the recurring argument on that, I guess for most Felucians, is that trammel made it unrealistic in the sense that, you will not find anywhere in the world a place where nobody can ever do anything to you, anything bad to you, where nobody can nobody can kill you, nobody can steal from you, nobody can do anything. That's not realistic, and that trammel basically create this utopia, really, whereas Feluca was a lot more real in the sense that there is giant danger and there is a challenge, and that challenge is also what makes it, what basically creates and forces to a certain extent the community, because you can't be safe all the time, and so when you want to do certain things you have to rely on other people. And that's often what initiated the conversation. You had to be careful on who you started talking to, but you also had to count on people, whereas in Trammel, you don't need anyone. You can just do your little thing on your own. You never have to fear or worry about anything. And once they introduced that change with UOR, and then later on with, things such as Power Hour, and even like the early stages of the guaranteed gain system, where people were getting mad gains and essentially, GMing any character as they wanted, being able to do whatever they want on their own, that this killed the community feeling even more. So I guess it's a little a different way of looking at it. Yes, Curzon.
Well, yes, I have to agree with you to a certain extent because of the Felucca rule set. It would cause, once you find friends, I believe it would cause the bond that grows in that friendship to become even more stronger, because you have to rely on each other to defend against would-be aggressors. As far as it not mirroring true life, yes, you're correct in that regard to a certain extent. There is no true utopia, even in the most guarded sense. Here in America, we had an incident in one of our prisons, which you would think would be one of the most highly guarded places, where some of the inmates took hostages and there was a standoff between them and the police for a while. So yeah, that's true. There's no true utopia. But then again, on the other side of the coin, there are no cheat programs in real life. There are no easy UOs. There are no, ways to get around the system where the genuine player who goes about the game in the way it was intended has a disadvantage against those players who use different methods to gain advantage and then keep it. So there's arguments on both sides of the fence. Don't get me wrong. I think that Felucca and the Felucca rule set is very needed. Without it, you're right, there is no greater challenge. To me, Felucca seems to me to be the ultimate dungeon, the final destiny of the player who is building his character up, to be able to go to Felucca and survive on a sort of an even footing with the other players. To me, that's like the ultimate, the final destination for any player. So to me, Felucca is the top of the list.
Well, I would have to agree with you in a way. I personally was, one of the people that started playing way back in beta, and then, in the early years, I just couldn't take the beating because I was, pretty much the fell mule, and I was just going around mining and smithing, and I would get my butt handed to me on a regular basis. And at one point, I was like, oh, okay, this is getting old, and I got just, sick and tired of it and said, okay, I'm out of here. And I actually quit playing UO for a while, and I came back just as UOR was coming back, and for a while there, I basically played Trammel only. And I was like, oh my God, this is heaven. But it was heaven for about a year, and then I started getting extremely bored. And then, at that point, I kind of rediscovered Felucca, and I was like, you know what? It really isn't so bad after all. But I would have to say it isn't so bad once you pretty much master the game. But until you do, it can be rough to handle. So I have to agree with you on that one.
Yeah, see, that's the key there, is once you've gotten past the beginning stages, it isn't so bad. And yeah, I think that Felucca is very needed, and I hope they never get rid of it. And I would like to see more risk involved in Trammel, though I'm not exactly sure how they would go about that. But I think that, yeah, you do have a point in that regard. I'm sure it's a thing that is on the developer team's mind quite a lot, because Yeah, that's a hot topic. It's, pros and cons on both sides. So I don't think either side is wrong. It's just how to mesh the two and make it balance.
True. And actually, that's another question I have for you, which is also a question that many Felucans have. And it's, how do you keep, like, as a GM of a Trammel-based guild, how do you keep the game challenging and interesting for your members? I mean, Trammel is basically all about crafting, trading, and PVMing. And, as you mentioned, your guild is mostly a PVM guild. So, everybody, regardless of which facet they mostly play, end up doing some crafting, some trading at some point. But, the trading and crafting part is really a tiny portion for most people, that is, of our playtime. But when especially for Trammel, PVM would be the brunt of it. And the question is, once you've maxed out your character's skills and you've fought and defeated pretty much every single one of the toughest monsters in the land, then what? What do you do to keep your members coming back for more? How do you keep the interest? How do you keep the game challenging for them?
Well, that is a tough spot. I mean, once you've been everywhere and got that sort of been there, done that syndrome going on, it is kind of tough. And I try to introduce as much in the way of like role play. I mean, like I said, we're not a hardcore role play guild, but I try to encourage it. I'll make little posts that maybe has a story in it or something like that to sort of spark the reader's interest and have them view the world of Sasari in a sort of a different light, maybe in a sort of a role play light. Well, then again, when they introduced Paragons, I think that helped out a lot. It was right now our guild currently goes to the ancient Worm Cave in Ilshinar. They're in the lava section. It's the egg cave, and we'll take our tamers there and fight Paragons for the chests. That's starting to wear thin, though, I think, because just about everybody has one of the chests or has gotten one of each of the minor artifacts of Ilshinar. And so maybe if they were to rotate out the old ones and maybe bring in new ones, I don't know how that would affect the balance and as far as artifacts themselves and would it detract from the ones that are already there? Would it sort of lessen the value of the major artifacts that like you get from Doom? But it does give, the Ancient Worm Paragon, that's a tough one. That is genuinely a tough one. And I think once, Sakara, once you go back to that ancient Lich cave that was part of an old EM event, if you go in there and there's nobody in there, there's 4 ancient Liches that spawn in there. And we have a really tough time of clearing that cave out to begin with, so that we can get it down to where it's just one ancient lich that spawns at a time. And I think that's what it is. I think it's looking for the people who have maxed characters. I think it's looking for those spots in Caesarea that have these high-end monsters. And I think the development team was on the right track when they created the Peerless boss that they're going to bring out in ML. I'm sure there are other ways that can maybe generate interest. I think I would like to see them pay a little more time on things that would help the role-playing community. I've heard that maybe they're going to do some kind of change to the spell polymorph, so that maybe you can stay in that form a little bit longer. That would help role players a lot. I had suggested one time in the Ideas Den that maybe they could make certain masks, like the orc mask, the orc tribal mask, that might be like, well, let's say they made a dragon mask then a role player could go in and play the part of some dragon lord or something like that. I think there's a lot of potential in the future of role play for the game, and especially with the average age of internet use going upward. I think it's in the 20 to 30 year range right now. Role play might be a good future to look at, and that's about it.
Well, one thing you were mentioning, like you're looking for the toughest creatures, and I definitely need to go into that cave. I'm going to have to let you know when I'm going in there so you can come rescue my newbie butt, because I know I'm going to be taking repeated third naps, just like walking in there. But yeah, that's why I've been fearing going there, because Jammer showed me the place, and I didn't go inside. He just told me there were ancient liches spawning in there. And I was like, ooh, okay, I will be going one of these days, but just not right now. So I feel a world of pain coming my way when I do go in there. But, you were talking about looking for, the toughest creatures and whatnot. But how do you feel about the way, the current state, I guess, of PVMing? Because we had been asking the dev team for a long time to make it more challenging, and they actually have upped the AI on the monsters, and they've done it a couple of times. We've seen it more clearly in champ spawns, especially the way the creatures would spawn a lot faster, and now recently with the AI that's really been clearly upped when, they cast a lot faster than they used to, and they don't seem to have any faster cast recovery delay like we do, and they don't even seem to have any faster cast issue, period. They use a lot of disruptive spells, and, most of them seem to move together as a group. Like sometimes as soon as you go into a dungeon, seems like every creature and their brother just automatically target you, and if they're spellcasters, you just get massively ganked. And how do you feel about that new AI? I don't really know how much of it there is in Trammel, because I really don't hunt all that much in Trammel, but it seems to be the same on both facets. And so, how do you find that new AI? Do you find it more interesting and challenging, or do you find it more frustrating?
No.
Yes, Shaitan.
Go ahead, Shai.
No, I was just thinking about what you were, the Lich Cave. I have a ninja character, and Curzon and I and a few other guildmates thought we'd clear it out, so I bravely said, well, I'll hide and then stealth and go into the Lich Cave and backstab a few of them and try and heal Curzon. So I went in and I started walking around in stealth mode, and 2 liches were following me everywhere, even though I was invisible. So as soon as I came to, I got 2 of them on me. Ooh, 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 another robe for the closet. So yes, it was fun.
Yeah, they can be fairly brutal, and you're right. It seems, especially since the Samurai Empire, they really, like, everything, absolutely everything reveals you now, and even when they don't reveal you, it's like they seem to know exactly where you're at, and they're just standing there in your face waiting for that invis to wear off or whatever, so that they can gank you.
Right, yeah.
Yes,
yeah, I genuinely like the new AI that they have. It does make it more challenging, I think. I think it was great. I think it was a wonderful addition by the development team. I would like to see, though, upon occasion, an actual intelligence behind some of those creatures. maybe if the GMs have a few spare minutes when they're not busy with player requests or something like that, maybe they could just pop onto say an Ogre Lord and generate a few extra Ogre Lords and some Ogres and Orcs and just rampage into an area and maybe even say some words like, I see you there. You can't hide from me. You there, behind that building, I'm going to get you now. Or something like that, show an actual intelligence. Yes, the AI is great. I love it. I think it's a great addition to the game, but I think this would even grab people even more if they were to have an actual person doing that every once in a while, just out of the blue. Yeah, that would be good too.
Yeah, Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, you mean like, you go into Ogre Lord Cave and then an Ogre Lord would come up to you and say, hey man, you fancy a dance? Instead of beating you up, instead of beating on your head, they could dance with you or sit down and have a cup of tea together and have a chat. I mean, I'd find that brilliant, but only every now and then.
That would certainly have everyone in the dungeon rolling on the floor laughing. if imagine a Balron walking up to you, a Paragon Balron, and saying, hey, sweetie, what you doing tonight?
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, buddy, can you spare a dime?
Yeah, that would be a riot, actually. But, yeah, I mean, that would be, that would be nice. But, unfortunately, this seems to be a problem that we've had ever since they canceled the whole SEER program. You don't have any of these free-thinking actions that you used to have back then. When you could have a SEER show up out of nowhere and do something really, really cool. And you just go like, oh, man, that was the bomb. But you don't get that anymore. And the EM seems to be on a very tight leash as to what they can and cannot do, and they don't really seem to be allowed to use their powers outside scheduled events. So I think, well, in my humble opinion, I think it's really sad because it's removed a lot of that, spontaneous, more realism, I guess, that you get in the game. It was just like, like most of the RP towns that we used to have, so many of them had blessings and various other things that were typical to the shard and to that town or whatever. On certain shards you can go around and you will see a statue was erected to the founders of a large player-run town or something. Or if they had, specific buildings that had, that were, for something specific in town. Some of them, especially for those of you who visited Paxlayer, for instance, they have so many blessed buildings in that town, and they had, they have that fighting combat pit area and whatnot that were really made specifically for Paxlayer, and I think it's awesome. And I would like to see more of that happening, but unfortunately, looks like the EMs are not allowed to do some of the things that the Seers were doing. And I know that a lot of people complained that Seers were showing favoritism towards one RP guild versus another one, but it still sucks that this has been removed for everyone. Yes, Kurs.
Yeah, I agree. I lament not being around when the Seers were still in the game. I've heard a lot of good things about it, and a lot of players talk about Seer events and Seer run things and things like that with a great amount of excitement in their voice or in their typing. And so, I look back and I'm like, wow, that was a really great age for Ultima, and I'm kind of sad that I wasn't around during that time. I understand that there's probably a certain amount of legality issues and, fairness issues that were involved in all of that. And with the event moderators, they are under the pay of EA, I think OSI, And so, yeah, you're right. They are on kind of a little bit tighter of a leash as far as what they can do. And since, it is a company that is trying to struggle to show profits and keep their investors, happy so that it keeps on running smoothly, I can understand that every extra little expense that they have, might work against that. And so it's a really tough spot, I think, for them to try and balance the finances and the legal issues and the fairness issues. But I think they're probably thinking on it like crazy because, from what I can tell from the development team, they genuinely love this game and they want to see it a success as well. And so to me, it seems like they're trying just whatever they can, do to bring that to the game. And I hope they succeed. I hope that they find some way to bring, an intelligence into the game as far as like the seers or event moderators and stuff. I'd like to see more of that. And yeah, so but it's a tough issue. I can understand their point of view for it. It's kind of tough.
Well, I think it's kind of sad, especially when you look at all the people that write so many storylines and whatnot, and the RP guilds that could really do some really great things if EA would get involved a little. Not to mention all the people that organize events and whatnot. If they had the support of the EM, it would be such a huge difference. And it's really, I think it's just a lot of great potential that's being wasted, and that would benefit the entire community if they were to do that and support the players a bit more that want to do stuff in the game. But I mean, I do understand that there were issues, especially with that counselor that sued them and whatnot, but I really don't see why it would be such a big issue for them to come up with a contract, like really tight contract where they basically cover all the bases so that nobody can sue them again over this, and where they could finally allow all the thousands of people that want to volunteer their time to make this more fun, to give them the ability to do this. But
right, you can't contract, but then you're talking retainer fee for the lawyer who's going to draw up the contract, the hours spent involved writing the contract, and what you have to pay him per hour. And so you see, it can come back to the money line.
Yes, it does. But down the road, so many people are really missing those times when you had real role play, and when you had real player-run towns. And I think that investment, like however much it would come up to, even if it was like 20, 30, 40K, who cares? It would be a one-time investment that they would benefit from for the years to come. And I think that, in my opinion, is more than worth the one-time investment. Yes, Viceroy, you want to comment?
Yes, if I remember correctly, I think they said something about that at the Washington, D.C. UO Town Hall meeting, if I remember correctly. They was asking the marketing guy about that and whether or not we was going to see any more of stuff like that. And he said something about later on in the year that they was having such a success over in Japan, and that later on in the year we was supposed to get more information about something like that. So hopefully we can maybe expect something, more about that, later on this year after UO Modane's Legacy's out.
Yay.
Well, I definitely want to, I guess I'm going to listen to that town hall meeting again. I meant to listen to it over again because I was at work when it was airing the first time, and it was kind of hilarious because my coworkers were like passing around and going like, what the heck are you listening to? And I'm like, shush, this is important. It's like, right, you're at work listening to something pertaining to a game and telling your coworkers to piss off because you want to listen to it. So Yeah, was lucky my boss wasn't around, but anyways, yeah, I definitely want to listen to it over again for the stuff that I missed, but especially for this because I do not recall that being mentioned, and if they are looking at bringing back some form of seer program, it will be the bomb because that was really a great time for UO.
I agree. I agree.
The seers and the counselors, they really made a huge difference. And I'm really looking forward to having something like that come back. And, while we're talking about EMs, how do you guys feel about the EM event? Do you feel that it's kind of meeting expectations? Do you think it could be improved? And, how do you guys feel that it's basically being done on your chart? Yes, Shai talk.
Well, for me, the EM run events are, well, I don't know how to put this. They are so long. They go on and on and on. I don't want to see another monster. So if they could make them short, sweet, few hours, then something moves somewhere else. You have to keep on your toes because something different's happening all the time. Instead of this thing going on for weeks and weeks, it's fed up in the end.
So, you're mentioning more like the invasions. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I have to agree with you on this one. I'm so sick and tired of the invasions that last for months. An invasion is cool enough, like let's have it last for a week and then let's move on. But, when you condemn a town or an area for like 2-3 months in a row, it kind of gets retarded at some point. I've always hated the invasions for that because after a while you're like, okay, been there, done that. Within the first month, everybody at least has had a chance to go and whack on some of those monsters. After a while, it's like, can we have that town back, please? It's getting old already. Yeah, Shai.
Yeah, you could read War and Peace twice and still have room to do a crossword.
True, very true. But I was referring more to the EM events, not so much the invasions, but more like, the smaller events they've been holding that most people don't even know when they're happening since they really don't advertise them much. But all the various events, among others, that introduce the new expansions. The ones that are supposedly tied to the whole lore of UO, just the various things that happened. I don't know if on Europa you had the quest that was written by E.M. Vincent, the one with the tuning fork, and, when we were basically chasing down Vincent the Brigand and stuff like that. I mean, these are some of the events that we had. The one that basically introduced the Pirates Cove location under Lord Blackthorn's castle, and all these other small events that are held once a week or so by EMs. Yes, Curzon.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the EM events. I think that it's probably pretty tough on those guys who are the EM. I mean, they're not making a living at this, so most likely they've got a job that they've got to do in real life, and so they've got to somehow fit all of this think and brain time in between and plan out this event. I think they're doing a great job. They got a heavy burden, and then there's the logistics. Not everybody is on at the same time, and there's always going to be somebody who's going to complain that they missed the last event. They didn't hear anything about it. Maybe if they had some better way of letting people know about the events without giving too much away. And yeah, I would like to see more of the lore incorporated, and maybe put somewhere in the game so that people could go and read up on this kind of thing, the lore of Ultima. Maybe that's what they're going to do with the new library system that they're going to have in Mondane's Legacy. I would hope to see that maybe the players could go somewhere and read all of this lore. I have to dig through the internet to find old lore and stuff from the pre-online games, and I'm building up quite a supply of this old lore, but it's very hard to find it. You have to really dig, and BNN helps a lot, but it doesn't cover a lot of things. A lot of things fall through the cracks, and I hope it is not lost indefinitely. But it would be great if there was a place in-game that players, because, once you're in the game, you really don't want to go to try and find some website to read some hidden passage somewhere in some buried, area. It would be a lot better if they could go, say, to the Lyceum, which is supposed to be the storehouse of all knowledge for Britannia. And they could go to the Lyceum, and instead of just finding the regular books that you find all throughout the realm, you could find books on old lore or on past events or anything like that, or maybe even some NPCs that if you ask them certain questions, they could tell you, certain parts of lore and stuff like that. I think lore adds a lot to the romantic quality of the game and makes people feel a little more involved in the overall story and sort of draws their character, and maybe even in some respects gets them to fashion their character to fit more with the lore of Ultima, if they can just get to it. The EM events, well, there we're talking about money and time and stuff like that too. So, how much money are they willing to spend on people to spend brain time to develop, really in-depth events and stuff like that. It's a tough issue, yeah.
I hear you. I just want to remind the people that are just joining us, or the people that have been here for a while wondering, what's going on? We are doing an interview with the ELV Guild of Europa, and right now we're talking about the state of EM events and, the lore, or rather lack thereof, or rather the difficulty to access the lore of UO. And, there was actually two things I want to comment on what you were saying, both on the lore and on the EM events. As far as the EM events go, a lot of people complain that they cannot have access to the events. They cannot participate to the events because they didn't know about it. And my understanding is, from what I've been hearing and reading on Stratix, among other places, that they do not want for everybody to know about them, because then it creates a lot of lag, and they want to avoid the lag, which is why the they only inform people at the very last minute, and only for a few seconds, so only a handful of people actually get to hear about it. And so the level of lag is more or less reasonable. But I think at the same time that it sucks, because if we have an event, everybody should be able to take part in it, and everybody should be informed of it, and not just find out by reading about it on Stratix after the fact. And so how do we change it so that people have a better chance at it? I think this is where I start to miss the whole scenarios, because they would go on for a longer period of time. And so people, that regardless of what time of the day you're on, because we all have different schedule, people still got a chance of taking part in it and still getting some of the goodies. Whereas now you have events that last for, maybe an hour or so. And if you didn't happen to be around the throne room when people were rounding up, then you're SOL. And then you only find out that this person, that person got some Uber event item that they're going to sell for like 100 plus mil. And you're like, okay, I'm SOL because I always work between these hours and they always hold the events at these hours, so I'm basically up a creek without a paddle, and I'll never have a chance to take part in it. So I think it would be nice if they would turn the events back to something where people all get a chance, regardless of what work of what shift you work on, regardless of lag, regardless of everything. And this is where I was so pleased with that event that E.M. Vincent had written, and to me it's still one of the best, if not the best event, because it was spread out on an entire week where people had to seek out clues and whatnot, and people just ran around for a long time, the entire week in groups, trying to figure out the clues and discover the books that were scattered throughout the land. And that was great because you could do this whenever. If you wake up at 2 in the morning, you want to do it at 2 in the morning, go right ahead. If you wake up at noon the next day, you can go right ahead and do it. There was no specific time frame, and since it was scattered all over, there was no lag issues. Whereas right now it seems that most EM events, at least the last ones I've attended, they all seem to be, okay, this person did this, let's go bash him. And, they take you to this tiny area where there's basically 20,000 creatures, all Paragon style, that are there to whoop you very brutally. And it's true, and you just end up dying repeatedly for like half an hour. And half the people leave because they're just like so pissed off. So you basically lagged and died repeatedly for half an hour until half the people left. And so when half these people are gone, the lag reduces significantly. So you can actually have a chance at killing the spawn. And so for those who put up with the pain for that half hour, end up killing the monsters, and and out of all these people, 5 of them will leave with some goodies. So you're like, okay, that was very frustrating. Next time, see ya. So I don't know. It's kind of weird. Yes, Curzon.
Yeah, I think you're on something there. It's really, I think it's the logistics. It has to do with the fact that there's one guy, the event moderator, and it's up to him to try and figure out what the best format is, and that's going to differ between event moderators depending on their real life schedule. If they could somehow figure out a way to have like a team, like the old Seer program used to be, if they could somehow work their way through that thicket of problems that they had with the Seer run events, I think we could probably see something like that. If we had, like, say, a team of one main event moderator, and he had, say, 6 other people underneath him who could conduct different small events hither and yon throughout the realms at different times, because to level it all onto one guy, I would not want to be that poor soul.
I know what you mean, and I think you're right. Either to have more than one EM doing that, or, the thing they had mentioned for a while there, they were talking about the spawn tile, and I think that would help significantly if they were to use that more. Instead of having, all the monsters spawn in that one tiny area where it creates insane lag, why not have 4 or 5 different spawn locations, so that if you have 200 people, instead of having 200 people participating in one area, you can divide them into 5 different areas. And so you end up having 40 people at each location, which would make a huge difference as far as the lag goes. Or, have events like the one E.M. Vincent wrote that sends you all over the place, and so you don't have a bunch of people together at the same time creating all this lag. Viceroy wants to make a comment. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm just kind of curious as to what might have changed, because I don't know if you guys remember whenever they did the invasion of Trisnik back, I can't remember when they did that, but if I remember, it was supposedly like a lord or something by the name of Janor or something like that. I'm kind of curious as to why the lag wasn't such as bad, considering that you had so many people back then that participated in an event like that. Yet nowadays, you get a few people together and you just start lagging all over the place. I'm just curious to what the difference is between now and then.
Well, I'm no programmer, but my thing would be the sheer amount of items and of information that you have to deal with nowadays. Especially since they introduced AOS, when you have like all the items with all these properties and everything. Every single time somebody walks in with all that information on them, all of this has to be loaded at the same time. So the more people you have, that's a lot more data that needs to be loaded and read. And so I'm thinking that could be it. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like what it would be, because, I mean, before you didn't really have all that because it was just real simplistic and it didn't have to calculate, all that information, just like you said. Yeah, I never even thought about that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking it is, because I remember back in those days, I used to hunt wearing my newbie clothes, my blessed newbie clothes. Even when I used to do factions, I was in factions on my thief, and all she wore were her newbie clothes, and because they were blessed, and I never had to worry about walking around naked or in a death robe, so it was a lot less stuff to deal with back then, whereas today people have like every single piece of armor they can come up with because you need those resists. And everybody has jewelry now, which wasn't the case before. Most people carry like a bunch of pots and aids and whatever, petals, this and that, and a bunch of different weapons, because you want a slayer for this, a slayer for that, and whatever. So not to mention clothes on top of it. So that's why I'm thinking it's just like a mix of all of the above that's creating a lot of this lag now. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention, based on what Curzon was saying earlier, regarding the lore this time, just mentioning in passing, some people were saying in IRC, by the way, you guys, if you have any questions or comments, you can send them to us on IRC, Euro Radio channel. You have all the details to connect to IRC on the euroradio.com website. But like Jammer was mentioning, on Europa especially, I know some of the shards kind of keep logs of what happens, but on Europa, your EM keeps fairly detailed logs of whatever happened on the shard. And I think that is not only awesome, it's also very important, because a lot of the lore is lost. There's a number of shards that have, so many unique locations that are remnants of seer events or even EM events that took place, and nobody remember what they were about. And there's nowhere to read about it except if you manage to stumble on some obscure website of a guild that was in existence at the time, hopefully still is, but likely isn't anymore. And, some of them kept the record of what happened there, and then you're like, oh, this is great, now we know what had taken place. But most of the time you just don't know anymore. There's a few places that require passwords for you to be able to access a secret spot. Most people don't even know what the password is anymore. Most people don't even know that place exists. They run by and, run by that place, and they're like, yeah, it's just, some, I don't know, pentagram lying there. And, you're going to stumble on a vet member that's going to go like, no, it's more than that. If you found that pentagram and say this, it takes you someplace else. people are like,
Right.
wow,
Right.
I had no idea. And so, it's really sad that all this lore is lost. And I remember someday I stumbled on a website that had a lot of the old Ultima lore, and among other things, you had a very detailed dictionary, Gargish dictionary, and you also had an Orcish dictionary, and I thought it was awesome. You had very, very detailed dictionary of, the gargoyle language. And I know there is one shard, I'm trying to remember which, that actually used that for one of their events, and they actually made the book. They copied the dictionary into a book, and the book is locked down in the Lyceum, in one of the books in the Lyceum, and I was like, wow, that's great. Why do we not have this in every single library? There's so many things like that should be part of the Ultima Online libraries, and they're not. And you're like, darn, it would be nice to have all these complete dictionaries, among other things, there. So, yeah, if you want to comment on that, Curzon.
Yeah, I agree with you. And like I was saying before, I would definitely like to see it used in, is that how you pronounce it, Lyceum? Yeah, on each shard, in fact. I mean, I'm used to calling it the Lyceum. Anyway, on each shard, you have the Lyceum, and historically, it's supposed to be the storehouse of all lore and knowledge for Britannia. And if they could maybe, well, let's say they could make a bookshelf that sort of like a bod book could hold stories and accounts and such like that, lore, knowledge, information, all of this stuff that you're talking about in that special bookshelf, and the player could click on the bookshelf and get this menu of stories like a menu you would see, say, in a bod book, and sort through it and look for the topic that they're looking for. But all of this would be found in the Lyceum. On each shard, you could go to the Lyceum and you could find these tidbits of information about the story as a whole, from creation on up, and also about each individual shard event and the things that happened there and the people involved and the items and the names and passwords or magical words to get into these places, where they're at, coordinates, etc. That would be great. I would like to see the Lyceum in each shard used more in this regard. I think it's a perfect spot for it.
Yes, you're right. I think it would be a great thing, and I don't know, maybe it'll drop into one of the dev members' ear, and they'll think about it, or our EMs or whatever.
Let's hope so.
But actually, speaking of dictionaries and such, I was asked to ask you, as an elf, do you speak the Elven language at all?
Well, there's several different renditions of the Elven language depending upon which story you've read. I did a lot of Dungeons and Dragons roleplay in my earlier years, and so I have the Drow dictionary for that. I also have the Gargish dictionary for Ultima. As far as being able to speak it, like right now, I don't think that I could do that. Languages are tough as is, and if you don't use them on a daily basis, it's really hard to, speak it.
Yeah, I hear you. Actually, now, speaking of elves, the upcoming expansion, Mundane Legacy, is finally doing what people have been asking for ever and ever and ever, which is introducing player races. And the first one they will be introducing is the elves, so yay for you. But have you had a chance to see the new elves, and what do you think about them?
Well, I was a little slow. I didn't get one of the beta test keys when I got to the website. It was all gone, and in fact, each time that I went back, they were all gone. So I haven't actually been into the beta and seen any of these places or things. I've only heard them secondhand from everyone. But from what I've been hearing, I'm really excited. I'm waiting for it to come out. I want to be able to explore and make a couple of my characters into true Ultima elves. I might even refashion some of their histories and stuff like that to fit more to the Ultima theme. I'm really excited about it.
Some of the players, actually a lot of the players, were rather upset that the elves were the first race to be chosen as the playable race. A lot of them felt that older races such as the orcs and the gargoyles should have been first, especially considering we have a lot of communities. It seems to me, I may be wrong, but it seems to me that there were tons of orc guilds and red orcs, especially even in the early days of Ultima Online. There were red orcs pretty much everywhere. Pre-UR, and they're like, why were the elves chosen and not us? And I was just wondering, like, what are your thoughts on that? Yes, Shaitan.
Well, the only thoughts I could possibly have on it is that they're jealous. I mean, we're handsome. And by the way, we don't have pointy ears. So, yeah, that would be it. And according to Tolkien, went away from the UO law, elves were the first race ever. And they like to sing a lot.
Yeah, I remember from reading Lord of the Rings, there was lots of singing. Can remember Bombadil? I wanted to shoot him, actually, at some point. Sorry. But,
Well, I have a little story about Tom Bombadil. I created a character, and you were talking about kind of role-playing guilds. Well, I was in Malice Bank as Tom Bombadil, and a role player came up and gave me a right dressing down because I had the wrong boots on. So I had to go away and change my boots. I came back and said, how's this? He said, that's perfect now.
Yeah, they were a bright yellow.
Yeah, I changed them from black to bright yellow.
well, yeah, a lot of, I guess they did mention that there was a poll that basically, that they had a few polls, and the majority seemed to be asking for elves, but in a way I can't help but sympathize, I guess, with the orcs, in the sense that the actual established UO communities seem to be a lot more numerous as far as orcs go, and also the art didn't really exist. Actually, the art did not exist for elves, but it existed for orcs already. So in a way, you'd be thinking that it would have been easier for them to just put the orcs in. But I don't know. Yes, Curzon.
Yeah, I had a discussion with a player recently about this topic, and we were talking about orcs being a player race. The problem there is that, they're an antagonist race, and we were talking about how that could be maybe incorporated into the game, and I was thinking, they might even be able to somehow put that into Trammel if, say, you started an orc player race and even gave them a city. If you were an orc and you're in your orcish city, maybe if a blue human comes into the city, he would be gray, and you could call for orcish guards to come and slay him. Just like if a player orc were to enter into one of the Britannian cities, they could call the guards on him, or something to that effect. That maybe there might be some way of incorporating an orc player race and still, keep a certain amount of the safety net that Trammell provides for players who don't want to involve themselves in PvP. I'm not sure exactly how the finer details of that would work out, or whether it would become, a problem like in the beginning days with Feluca, and you had the Reds hanging out at the edge of the city calling the Blues all town huggers. I don't know how that would work out.
That is so funny. But you're right. But you have to admit that's what it looked like.
Yeah.
But they have new names now for like, for instance, all the people that are bank sitting. That's one thing that I remember when I used to play Trammell that always used to mark me, the fact that because I owned a shop that was right outside Moonglow Gate, and so I would run in town all the time to grab whatever, either from the bank or from one of the NPC stores, and there would always be the same people systematically every single day, no matter what time of the day you would log in. The same people would be sitting by the gate or, on that little piece of grass that's right next to the armorer's shop. And they would just sit there yapping all day. And it was just like, I don't know, I just thought it was kind of funny. I was like, okay, I guess, Moonglow is kind of their chat room for them or something.
Right, different people, different game styles, different play styles.
Yeah, I just thought it was kind of interesting. But yeah, I guess one of the things you guys, well, I don't know, because you were mentioning that how you're having fun right now, and how challenging Ancient Worms can be. Now, you say you haven't tried the new expansion, which is a little sad, because I would have liked to know how you felt about the new champs, the new bosses in the Peerless dungeons and whatnot, because I have tried a few of them. They are nasty, and when I say nasty, I mean like, we're talking 1-2 hit kills, pretty much like Paragon Balron. And
wow.
oh yeah, they're really badass. There's a lot of even before you get to the to the boss itself, some of the creatures that spawn freely in the dungeons are really, really bad. I keep forgetting the name of that one, but in the Dryad dungeon, there's a rehued crocodile. I mean, I had an all 70 suit, and it would hit me once for like about 70 damage, and if he managed to hit me a second time, you knew I was dead. So that one was pretty bad, and I guess for a guild like yours, it's going to be great because they are really aiming at group effort. There is no way in hell you're going to be able to defeat that monster alone. There's like no solo playing in your ML.
Right. Yeah. There is what they have already. I think there's a lot of things that people can do solo, and that's great because you don't want to disinclude the solo player. A lot of people, they're a little shy or whatnot, and maybe they don't like being in large groups or whatnot. But yeah, I am looking forward to these new monsters and these new systems. And I think it's great that they have several underbosses, so to speak, and regions and items that you have to collect before you can even attempt the Peerless boss. It'll help with those people who do like to play in groups and who do like to, make that group effort and coordination and tactic and whatnot. It will give them a new frontier to explore, a new horizon, a new goal to seek, and it won't be an easy one, and I think that's great. I think that some of the more experienced players and stuff will probably get there pretty quick. I don't know, but I'm betting that it's going to be pretty tough for just about everybody, and the group effort will hopefully inspire a greater community, which to me is really the core of what draws everyone to games like Ultima, is the community. To me, community is number one.
I agree. The only thing that I'm kind of worried about, I guess, and this is straying a bit from interviewing you guys, but it is one thing that kind of worries me, because I don't know really what level your members are at. Like, if you're mostly like a really advanced guild, I mean, skill-wise, and, you know, if most of your members have like uber weapons and armor and whatever, or if you're really like a mix of, you know, some newer members or some more veteran members and whatnot. But, you know, it can get challenging, and it probably will get challenging for you if you have large gaps between, you know, your more experienced and your younger members doing some of these quests, because when I did the first one with the Melisande, when we tried to defeat Melisande in the Dryad dungeon, it was insane. All the people that went in there with me fighting the boss, Melisande, are really experienced people. You know, people that basically do champ spawns 24/7 in Feluca, and we're talking like, you know, PVMing is just a breeze. We do most of it like with our eyes closed. And, I mean, we got decimated, not just once. It was pretty rough. And you're thinking, okay, we're hardcore PVMers and PvPers, and, you know, we got messed up like this. And we're thinking, how are, you know, people that don't have as good armors as we do and who aren't has, you know, I guess experience with a lot of these really tough creatures going to handle this? So, I don't know. How do you feel about that, Curzon?
Well, as far as our guild in particular, we do have a wide variety of different level of players. I would, on average, I would say that we're probably medium to upper range in ability. We do have new players that come in that need help and stuff, and but yeah, that's how I would describe ELV. As far as being able to tackle the new monsters, I can remember when Dungeon Doom first opened and the Gauntlet came out, and the first few times that I went to the Gauntlet, I was decimated every single time, and it didn't really matter how many players we had with us. We got torn apart by the bosses there. But you know, as I continued to go to the Gauntlet, and we started to learn the tactics involved and how the monsters acted and reacted, and what to look for and what to watch out for, it got easier and easier. It's like riding a bicycle. When you first get on, you know, you're going to be wobbly, you're going to maybe fall over, skin your knee. But then after you've been riding it for about a year, it's a breeze. You jump on, it's no problem. I don't know, maybe the Feluca champs were like that for you from the beginning. You know, when you first started trying them, you got your, you know, your, like you said, your butt handed to you. But now it's pretty much a breeze. I think that's probably what it's going to be like as the players learn how these monsters act and interact and what they do and what they can expect from them. I think that after a time, you know, they'll start out like you did, getting decimated, but then after a time, you know, they'll learn tactics, they'll learn what it takes, how many people you need to even attempt it, what kind of skills you will need once you're there, and what kind of tactics you'll need to do in order to survive. It's just going to be a learning process, I think.
I agree. Yes, Shaitan.
I just wanted to add that maybe with this Mondane's Legacy, you'll see a lot more bank sitters retain.
Frankly, well, you know, Curzon was mentioning that it's a learning process and all, but I'm actually worried that a lot of people are going to be saying, oh my God, that place is crazy, I'm just not going anymore. Because to get into that
Yeah.
that peerless section, people need to be in your party, and so that kind of makes it up to 10 people. And, you might end up going like, okay, this is just too hard. I just wasted like 100K in insurance just trying to get this done, and, and I still failed in the end. So this was such a waste of money. And for people that aren't necessarily wealthy, they're going to get at the end of this and go like, okay, this is just too frustrating. I'm not doing this anymore. And I'm just afraid that for people that really aren't as much into it or aren't wealthy enough to get like really the Uber armor so that they can survive longer, are just going to get to a point where they go like, this is just not for me. And that all these harder quests are basically going to be elite quests where the more vet guilds get to do them, and the ones that are less basically just sit by and watch and end up having to buy whatever from other people, pretty much like, right now Champ Spawn's system, where you only have the Felucans doing all the spawns and all the Trammies having to buy from us, which kind of sucks for the Trammies. So anyways, what do you feel about that, Kurs?
Yeah, you're right. There's going to be those who get discouraged. Well, you see that now. I see that now with players that will go to, like I said, the Gauntlet, and they constantly die or are constantly dying, and they wind up losing a lot of money in insurance. And some of them do get discouraged. That's true. And in fact, I feel kind of that way when I go to do champion spawns, because I am a Tremolite, and I have played in Tremel for most of my year. I don't use UO Assist, and so that kind of handicaps me a little bit. I've just recently learned how to use TeamSpeak, and so, these Feluca players who do the champion spawns all the time, they definitely have an advantage on me. And I think that the new peerless bosses will be kind of the same way. But the bottom line is that they will see that people can do them and that they can complete them. And I think that will be encouragement to maybe come back and try again later on in the future.
Yeah, you're right. Well, we will definitely see how that pans out, but hopefully everybody will get to try a little bit of it. Yes, Viceroy.
Yes, I actually have a few questions in which I want to go ahead and ask these guys, if that's okay with you.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, what I want to do, I always have this question which I always have to ask everybody in which we interview, and if you listen to some of our past interviews, you probably already got a good idea of what the question is going to be, and I think I already have an idea where you stand on this, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you anyways. I'm kind of curious as to whether or not if they were to bring back a pre-UR shard, pre-Renaissance, would you be interested in playing on a shard like that? And I would like to hear from both you, Curzon, and Shytop, but starting with Curzon, though.
Yeah, I would definitely take a look into it. I have a character on Siege Perilous because I was kind of curious, what it would be like to have a character in a setting that was completely Feluca rule set. So I have a character there. I don't really play on him much, but I have played on him because my curiosity drives me to. I wanted to see and experience what it would be like to play in a shard where there were no Trammel rule sets, where I had to constantly be on the lookout. And I would definitely take a look into a pre-shard like that, just so that I could see what the type of gameplay style, how the community interacts there. I would definitely be interested in checking it out. I think it's a great idea.
Excellent. Go ahead, Shytalk.
Yeah, well, you're asking the wrong person here, but I'll be letting Curzon go on his own on that one. I was like we said at the beginning, I played UO years ago, and couldn't mine, you couldn't collect anything. You were just killed, constantly going ooh, ooh, ooh everywhere. and I just didn't like it at all, so I left, and now I've come back recently, so I really wouldn't know how to answer your question on that.
You just answered that you pretty much didn't like it back then. Well, that leads me to my next question here. Just exactly when did you guys start playing Ultima Online? And, how long have you guys been playing, and beginning with Curzon?
Well, I started on the Renaissance CD. I was brought in by a friend who played on the Catskills Shard, and in fact, that's where I started, was in Catskills Felucca back in September of that year. And I played in Catskills. My friend left shortly after that, and I played in Catskills after he left for probably about 3 or 4 months. But because I was a night worker, I constantly found that the Catskills Shard would be down during the time that I wanted to play, and during those times I would go to Europa, where I started Curzon and another character, and I started playing there, and I got to meet some of the European friends, and I really started to like the Shard. Even though it had a little more lag than Catskills for me, I liked the people there, and I made some good friends, and finally I decided that I was going to stay there, and so that's pretty much where I've been ever since. And that.
Okay. When did you say you started again? Could you say that again?
It was
like what year?
Let me see. It was during the Renaissance CD, and I've been in the game for just over 5 years.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Shy Talk.
Well, I've been playing for just under 2 years now. So I'm
that's right.
Really new, yeah.
Well, you said you played it a long time ago, and then you just didn't like how things were. When did you first give it a try and just didn't like the way things were back then? What year was that?
I was looking on the internet, and I saw that, I read up a little bit. I didn't realize that, and I saw that they changed it, and there was 2 kind of shards, Felucca and Pamel, and I thought, well, at least I can get strong now before I get killed. So, now I'm strong, and I've got great armor, and I go to Fel, and I still get a shroud, or 2, or 3.
Yeah, but, I guess what I'm really trying to ask is, when did you, first give it a try? I mean, yeah, you said you came back, and then, you started playing on a regular basis, but when was the actual first time you ever gave Felucca a try? What year was that?
Oh, that's so long ago. It's got to be when it first started. I remember the year, but you used to end up coming through a little doorway in Britain, and it said that somebody would help you. Did they help?
No, not really. But yeah. So it probably was somewhere between 97 and 2000. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess that's going to lead me to my next question here. Do you think it would have been probably a little bit more enjoyable for you guys? I hear how you tell me about, your terrible experiences, how you got PK'd and stuff. You couldn't really get much of an opportunity. But wouldn't you agree with me on this statement that maybe perhaps rather than introduce a whole similar landmass like Trammel, would it have been better, in your opinion, starting with Curzon, do you think it would have been better if they had maybe, instead of making a whole new facet, do you think it would have been better if they just, extended the guard zone of Midnock to where it included all of the mines in Midnock? Or do you think it would also have been maybe a good idea if they just created a zone, like Haven or something, to where you could have, had an opportunity to, get strong enough and to where you could actually venture out into a more dangerous area? Or do you think there always should have been a facet just where it's complete safety and have the same opportunities? Go ahead, Curzon.
Well, I think that there's pros and cons for both, actually. But the one thing that I was focusing on that it may still be able to be used was a toggle option for PvP, no matter where you are. And, there would have to be some kind of delay on it so that you couldn't just toggle no PvP, and then once the threat was gone, toggle PvP, or just choose. Probably like with factions, you'd have to have some kind of I don't know, 24-hour or 2-day delay or something like that. I thought that a toggle option for PvP on the avatar would probably be a good idea.
Yeah. Go ahead, Shy Talk.
Yeah, just what you said earlier about, extending the guard zones. Even way back then, I think I would have stayed in the game. I'm sure I would, because it would have given me that chance, unless you really got some kind of character about you. Those people who survived that and became good PvPers, so to be given that little chance, and then once you've done it, once you've decent armor, then you would learn what PvPing is about. At the moment, I suppose, with Trammel, most people think, well, I'm happy here. It's very safe. I don't get killed. And look at all this dosh I'm making. Dosh being slang for money.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, about the whole toggling system which Curzon suggested, my whole thoughts on that is I don't ever really think that would work for at least me. I mean, that wouldn't appeal to me because I'm more of a guy, who's more into the realism and more into the danger aspect, realistic aspects of, that's what I think the game ought to be, more geared towards realism. And, I just don't really think and see how there would be much of a difference between having a whole new facet and a toggle system because, there's just no, element of danger. I mean, if you can't hurt nobody else, I mean, I think it, it's exciting, knowing that you can be hurt and you can hurt anybody else. You can be a bad guy, and and if everybody's got a toggle on, and and you can't hurt them, then how can you fulfill your role as a bad guy? As a villain, or a jerk, I mean, let's face it. I mean, there's going to be one in every bunch. So go ahead, Curzon.
Yeah, I see your point. Maybe it would be a good idea to keep the two separate facets. That way you wouldn't be able to have a toggle in Feluca. But maybe you could bring more PvP into Trammel if there was a toggle, say, for Trammel. The downside of it is, if you're not a good player, if you don't really have the tools that some of the better players use to be these bad guys, like assist or some other things that help them to gain the advantage, then you're going to have the same scenario happening that happened back then. You're going to have players like Shaitak who were constantly, sort of bullied. And they got tired of it, and they left the game. That's what was happening back then. They were losing accounts because people were just tired of being bullied. And they didn't really have any place to go except in town, and sometimes not even there. I remember once when I was in Catskills, I was in Moonglow, and there was a raid by a bunch of riders. There must have been 20 or 30 of these guys. They just come riding into town, and they started killing everybody. Of course, the guards were called, and they slowly started to drop to these guards, but by the time it was all over, there were probably 10 to 15 townsfolk that were dead, and, of course, all the marauders were gone by then or dead. But I think that's a tough thing. There's pros and cons on both sides, and maybe a toggle system for Trammel, but maybe not for Feluca. Maybe that might work a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah, if they was going to do something like that, the way I think they ought to approach the situation is either, make a exclusive zone for, like people who really wanted an opportunity to build themselves up before having to venture out into more dangerous territory. That's one way I think they could have done it. Another way is, basically extend the guard zone in places like Midnock and stuff like that, so, people who mine there had an opportunity. I mean, make that like a little safe mining area. I mean, one town.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
I mean, you're gonna have to compete with every. People are gonna be like, well, they're gonna get all this for nothing. Well, the thing is, if you have all these people who are trying to mine in relative safety, they're going to have to compete for ore. And, and once the ore weight runs out, you're going to have to wait around until that ore respawns and stuff. So, yeah, it's going to have its pros and cons. I mean, you're going to be able to mine in safety, but you ain't going to get anywhere as near as much ore like you did back then. I mean, like, as you would, mining out in a remote area. Go ahead, Sakara.
Well, I guess what I'm really missing personally as far as this whole thing goes, because I mean we discussed at length the whole PvP switch possibility on Stratix for a while there, and I think people pretty much agreed with something like Viceroy was saying earlier. For most people, it wouldn't do it for them because the PvP switch already exists, in fact, in UO, and it's the two facets. If you don't want to have the risk of being attacked, you stay in Trammel. If you're okay with that risk being there, you go to Fel. So the switch is already in place. But, for me, what would do it more is really getting back to that whole community feeling that we had in the very early days of UO when there was no Trammel. And I think having that interview with EFL Guild last week, probably last Sunday, really reminded me a lot more of what it was like. And it's, when you have a guild like them who, are clearly an evil guild, they're there to take over the shard, dominate, and, wipe out everybody that's, it's like, if you're not with us, you're against us, and therefore you die. It's when you have an evil force like this, and then you have this balanced by a good force. You have the bad guys. Where are the good guys defending all the other weaker guys? And that's what I would like to see coming back. You have the good versus evil, and the balance being maintained. When you used to have heroes that would go out, just looking for the dreadlords that were killing innocent miners and such, and you had all the heroes that was basically just going around, looking for the miners to be defended against those bad people. And even just from a role-playing point of view, it just made it a lot more realistic. You felt a lot more like you were back in the medieval days, which we don't have at the moment. And I think that would be so awesome if we could recapture that. Yes, Curzon.
Let me ask you guys, Viceroy and Sakara, do you guys have characters on Siege Perilous?
Actually, I've been playing this game for about 8 years now, and I have a pretty good idea. But to answer your question, no, I do not have a character on Siege Perilous because, in my opinion, I won't play Siege Perilous, and here's why. Siege Perilous, to me, is not Felucca, and it's basically a hybrid of Trammel ideology and Felucca. And I won't play on a shard like that. Basically I don't like the concept of taking something from Trammel and introducing it and putting it on a Felucan shard. I mean, that's the mixture of the two does not work for me. But, for me, I've played this game almost 8 years, and I can pretty much tell you, that yes, I used to be a miner. I used to have people steal my ore after I worked about 2 or 3 hours mining. I've had people come along and PK me, but I can also tell you that, I've had guilds who have actually come to my, I don't know about on Europa or whatever shots y'all did play back on them, but I can tell you on Chesapeake, I knew of one guild that would actually protect miners, and that their mission was to protect miners and people like myself, protect the weak. And, the people who could not defend themselves, they would actually go and stand at the mines and ensure my safety while I mined. I don't know if that's what, if you ever found anything like that when you was playing back in the earlier days, but that is the experiences or fond memories that I take from the old days. Yes, it was harder. And yes, I did get killed a lot. And yes, many hours did go in vain. But, I, lived through it and became stronger, Go ahead, Sakara.
Oh, gee, sorry. I forgot to turn that off. But but yeah, definitely what you were saying is kind of what I was referring to, that I miss those days when you had all these people that wanted to play the good guys, and that was just, you know, scouting the land, looking for, you know, the innocents to defend and the evil to slaughter. So I think that was such different. That was like, you know, it's what's missing right now in UO. I see a lot of RP guilds, but it's not the same thing. What are you really fighting over? I see some guilds, you know, even on Atlantic, most of the RP guilds now are not even in Fel anymore, where they all used to be before. They're all in Trammel. And, you know, most of them fight over towns that they don't really control. You know, and I'm looking at them like, okay, what are you really defending? Nothing really. It's all theoretical, whereas back in those days, you were really fighting for the people, and whether you fought or not made the whole difference for these people, because if you weren't out there protecting those miners, there was no resources for them. There was no armors being crafted. There was nothing being done. These people needed you to be there. Same thing in certain dungeons. I'm trying to remember which shard it was, that you had this red guild that had laid claim on Khaldun, and anybody that wanted to enter that dungeon needed to wear a red bandana, which was the symbol of that guild, and it was kind of you know, showing respect to that guild and recognizing that they owned it. And if you were in Khaldun without that red bandana, they would whip you. And most of the time they would kill you, and then once you were dead, they would explain to you why you were killed. And they would leave a red bandana on your corpse so that you knew better next time. I thought that was awesome. You know, it's just, I mean, it's a whole RP thing, you know, but we don't have that anymore. Go ahead, Viceroy.
And yeah, thank you. What I wanted to also, you know, point out and everything, you know, like earlier, you know, I've had the experiences that most other people probably haven't. I personally have played both the good guy and the bad guy. And, you know, so I can see from both points of view as to, you know, what made the game exciting for me. You know, back in the early days, I used to play a good guy for the simple fact that, you know, I had a thief, I had a PKer. I've also been a miner. I've been the person who went out and made victims out of people. I've also been the victim. So, you know, I guess I've got my fair share out of all of it. But, you know, you have to, you know, play various play styles and see which one fits you best. Are you better at playing an evil role player, or, you know, the bad guy? Or are you best at playing the good guy? What's more appealing to you? Go ahead, Kursan.
Yeah, I can see your point there, Viceroy. It would, you know, kind of engender a greater role play aspect if you had something to actually fight for, like Sakara was saying. How to get that without discouraging, you know, weaker players? That's the crux right there, I think, because they don't want to discourage people. You know, they don't want another scenario where you have people saying, "Well, I can't ever get ahead. There's not enough good guys around. All the bad guys have all the tricks of the trade to win every time." Maybe it was just my experience, but it seemed like when I started in Felucca, there were a lot of bad guys that were really good at being bad guys, and there just weren't enough good guys to defend. And so it was really tough to try and venture out of the towns. But I can see your point there, though. And yeah, that kind of setting does encourage more role play, more I don't know, a swelling of the breast as far as, you know, what you're doing has meaning. Maybe this pre-AOS shard that everybody is talking about, maybe they should even take a look at having it as a pre-Renaissance shard, or maybe even having an extra shard that is a pre-Renaissance shard that is completely Felucca, and where people can go to re-experience that sort of deep bonding of community.
Yes, and actually, the request currently is for a pre-UOR shard. You know, right before Trammel ever existed. I don't know, they've said many times that they will not do it, but, a few times they kind of said, maybe we'll think about it, but. So, I don't know, I'm not holding my breath, but, people keep pushing, and, how it is, eventually the dev team usually gives in, even though they haven't given in for the 800 skill point yet, and we're still pushing for that one, but we shall see. But anyways, it's about time to wrap up the show. So I will ask you 2 more questions, actually. The first one, where do you see your guild in, I don't know, a year, 2 years, 5 years from now? Do you have any great plans for the future? Or, as Shy Talk was saying earlier, are you basically taking it one day at a time and seeing where the wind blows and, where it will take you down the road?
Yeah, well, I joined the Ultimate Dragons, the Internet chapter, and one of the statements I made in that when I joined was that I was going to see you all through. I have a faith in the concept of the virtues. I think that was a brilliant idea on their part when they put that into the game. It has a certain romantic quality that I think everyone can identify with, and that it inspires the community, the idea of the virtues. I'll stay with Ultima until they kick me out, actually. But yeah, as far as the future, I think Shai had the right of it that we'll just take it day by day, month by month, and hopefully we'll see a brighter future. And maybe, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Alrighty. Would you care to give the address of the ELV Guild website for people that want to find out more about you and also read about some of the stories that you've written? He's written some pretty cool stories, people. So you wanna hop over there and read some of it. So want to give them the website for your guild?
Sure. The website is www.elveuropa.com, elveuropa.com. And it was provided for us by a good member of our guild who we don't see as much as we'd like to anymore, Duncan. But yeah, elveuropa.com. That's our website.
Alrighty. Well, I thank both of you, Curzon and Shy Talk, for joining us today in this interview and telling us a bit more about the Elven League of Virtues and about, what's going on in Europa and your views of the game and where it's going. And I don't know if you guys each have a parting comment you want to make.
Well, I want to thank you, Milady, and my Lord Viceroy. My wife, who also plays, wants to say hello. And I would just say in parting, Ultima is, to me, one of the greatest games that has ever come out for online, and the virtues are a big part of that. And I hope that for all of you out there, that the virtues can be your guide, because they have been mine. And here's my wife wants to say hello.
Hi, this is Reva. Just want to say hi to all the wonderful people in ELV. This is also Ilea, and a special hi to Jar that's in Scotland. ELV rocks!
Okay, that's it from me.
That was cute. All right, Shy Talk, your turn.
Well, I'd just like to say it's been a pleasure being in your company tonight, Viceroy and Sakara and Curzon, and it's been enlightening. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being there, and I had to say this, Shy Talk, I think your accent rocks. I am a total sucker for foreign accents, and the minute Curzon said he had one of his members that's from Britain, I was like, oh my goodness, bring him. So anyways, thank you again, everybody, for joining us. And don't forget, on Sunday at 5 p.m., we will be interviewing the Black Company Guild from Great Lakes. And it should be quite interesting, especially, as I said before, they had been visited by the Empire of the Fallen Lords Guild, who we had interviewed last weekend. And we will also be interviewing the Hot Guild of Atlantic on the 21st, on Sunday the 21st. And we also have another guild from Baja that wants to respond to some of the not quite accusations, but some of the comments that had been made regarding them during some of our previous interviews. I believe Viceroy also has another comment he wants to make. Go ahead, Vice.
Sure. I'd actually want to just let the people out there who are, before we actually go and everything, I want to remind them that we're also having a talk show tomorrow around 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, so you'll definitely want to tune in for that as well, which is 10 p.m. GMT, and that is 7 a.m. Sydney time. So be sure to tune in for that tomorrow, because we will be talking about a wide range of issues. And also, to let you all know a little secret, we are going to be broadcasting live the Berlin Town Hall meeting. Yes, that is right, folks. The same people that brought you Washington, D.C., we're going to be bringing you Berlin. London's still up in the air, so I'll let you guys know we are looking at London as well. The only thing that we're lacking right now, it seems, is the mixer board, and that's just about it seems. So, I don't know. Maybe we can get somebody out there who's listening with a mixer board or something. Go ahead, Sakara.
Alrighty, so it's a date. Don't forget this Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for the next interview, and also tomorrow we will have our usual weekend talk show. So be there, and thanks again to everybody that joined us in IRC and all our other listeners that joined us today. Once again, thank you, Curzon. Thank you, Shy Talk. Thank you, Viceroy, and I'll see all you guys very soon, actually tomorrow. So take care, everybody.
Thank you, milady. Farewell.